Aysha Baqir will be in conversation with Maheen Usmani. Maheen, may I ask you to come and join us in the front? I would like to thank Mr. Farooq Hassan for being a wonderful and gracious host today at his beautiful home. Farooq Hassan Saab, I think you are here. Farooq Saab has very graciously hosted this event, and also he wanted everyone who came here to have a copy of the book. So the book is right here in the front. If you don't have a copy, please help yourself. Aysha Baqir grew up in Pakistan. Her time in college sparked a passion for economic development. In 1998, she founded a pioneering not-for-profit economic development organization, Kaarvan Crafts Foundation, with a mission to alleviate poverty. Her novel, Beyond the Fields, was published in 2019 and featured at the Lahore and the Karachi Literature Festivals, and also at the Singapore Writers Festivals. Aysha lives in Singapore. It was also featured in the Women in Literature Festival in 2021, and also Money FM Career 360, and at Yale-NUS. Her interviews and book reviews have appeared in Expat Living, Countercurrents, the Herald Kitaab, and the Tempest. She is an Ashoka Fellow and recipient of the Vice Chancellor's Alumni Achievement Award from LUMS. And this book was published originally in Singapore, and through the good offices of Aysha, we got a license to publish it for Pakistan. And we are delighted to have published this book. It's in the market and it is doing very well. It is a very recent book, so we have sent it out to various magazines and newspapers across Pakistan, and hopefully reviews will be appearing soon. And I also want to say a few words about Maheen. Maheen is a writer and a journalist, and her book, The Mercurial, it's a book of short stories called The Mercurial Mr. Bhutto, has been very widely read and is a very popular and a very and quite a gripping read. So, and once again, a big thank you to Farooq Hassan Saab for graciously hosting this event in his beautiful home, and a big thank you to all of you for joining us here today, and thank you, Maheen, for being a moderator. And enjoy the discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
Can you hear me? Yes, it's working now. Good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum, Khush Amdeed. We are very happy to be here at the launch of Aysha Baqir's book. I had a look at Aysha's book as obviously before this talk, and I found it a lot of people have been praising it, but I found that the female characters, especially in the book, they jumped right off the pages of the book. They resonated with me and they were very interesting. It showcased hard work, humor, resilience, grit, many things our women are known for but not acknowledged. So at the outset, I would like to ask Aysha to maybe delineate a bit on the book, tell us a little bit about the plot without giving it away. Over to you, Aysha.
Thanks. Hello? Hello? Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much, Maheen. So Beyond the Fields is a novel about rape, resilience, and reclaiming honor. It's set in rural Pakistan in the early 1980s. It's a story of a young girl named Zara who has dreams. She wants to study, she wants to become someone important, she loves kairis, raw mangoes, she goes into the orchards, and then one day her twin, her best friend, is abducted and raped. And that's when Zara has to decide what she's going to do, because she sees her family and community giving away under patriarchy. And Zara's conflict and her journey really defines the conflict and the journeys of thousands of village women that I met while I worked in Pakistan. So I hope that's enough of a teaser if you haven't read the book. Thanks.
So Aysha actually is somebody who puts puts the money where the worth is. She actually had an NGO called Kaarvan, which works with village women in rural Punjab, and her motto for the woman there is not dependency. I would like to ask her a little bit about the women in Kaarvan and what she learned from them, because Aysha, you've said that those women are your heroes. So why do you say that? Before we go to your book, we'll just have a brief bit about that.
So a little bit about my journey, why I came into development and how it all happened. I graduated from the American school, and it wasn't a tradition in my family actually to go to college. I was lucky that my parents encouraged me. I won a scholarship and went to Mount Holyoke planning to study psychology. I took a class in international relations where for the first time I think I saw that Pakistan was a underdeveloped country. At that time they used the word underdeveloped. And it hit me, the fact that I had lived in the country for 17 years and not even realized that the majority of the population lives under the poverty line. And so I changed my major, focused on international relations, and despite sort of knowing that I was cutting my ties, all my options in the US, I still wanted to come back to Pakistan because I didn't know anything about poverty. What is poverty? How can we talk about poverty when we have not lived it or understood it from the, how the women live? So I returned back to Pakistan. I worked for 2 years, and I quickly realized that women do not need our charity or sympathy. What they need is access to trainings and networks and market linkages, because they are so brave and resilient if you give them an opportunity. Yes, and they are sharp and shrewd and smart. And why shouldn't they be? Because they have to make do with such little. So when I came back, I worked with 2 organizations, and then I decided that I needed an MBA to be able to equip myself with the skills so that I can help the women. Because like I said, they don't need our charity and sympathy, they need access to skills. After finishing my MBA, and much to the disappointment of my MBA class, which was wanting me to work in a prestigious bank, so the grade, the class average would be higher, I joined a non-profit. This was 98, and then the journey for Kaarvan began. So Kaarvan is a not-for-profit organization. We work with women in rural areas, and we focus on an approach called value chain development. This approach is different from other approaches because it's about us being a facilitator rather than a player. And what this means is that we treat the women as our customers, not our beneficiaries. We enable them to develop direct linkages with players in the markets, whether they be wholesalers, retailers, exporters. And we figure out that by examining what are the gaps, what is preventing these women. So whether it's they're not trained to speak to the shopkeepers, or whether it's another number of other factors, we train them on that, and then we go ahead and we conduct buyer-seller meetings. So Kaarvan was founded in 1998, and I lived in Lahore. I was working in Lahore and running Kaarvan from 1998 to 2013, when I relocated to Singapore, and that's when I began to write Beyond the Fields. So a little bit about development and not dependence, and that's a key theme that runs through the book and through the work of Kaarvan. We at Kaarvan don't believe that we should be making the poor dependent on us, because what happens when we exit? They will be left where they are. It's all about developing our own exit plan when we start a project. So that's the key theme that runs through all the projects, and I would like to say the fact that when I relocated, I was very scared. I was terrified. I was a CEO, I was a founder, and I was giving away my baby to someone else. And at the same time, I knew maybe this was a test. If Kaarvan could survive without me, then we would really be, living out what we had said. It would really be development without dependence on any one of us. Thank you.
So, thank you. Thank you, Aysha. You can see that you feel very strongly about these issues, and that comes through in your work as well as in your writing. I wanted to ask you about succession, what we had talked about earlier. What happens in our country mostly is that institutions are dependent on one leader or a messiah, so to speak. So once the messiah or the leader departs, then the whole institution collapses or erodes. And in your case, for your organization, you made sure that you selected somebody who could carry the work forward and who has been doing an excellent job for the last 8 years, did you say, that you've been away in Singapore. So take us through that. How did you come up with that idea, and how you think that this should be implemented in all institutions in Pakistan? Specifically, I'm talking about Pakistan, because here we see that everything is dependent on the one leader. Future leaders are not groomed,
Yes.
or they are not given, things are not delegated to them. So what is your take on that?
So I'd like to start with an incident, just because to really work with the poor, you have to understand why succession becomes important. This was first year I started Kaarvan. We went to Bangladesh, to the Grameen Bank to study their program. And under the training, we had to go live in the villages. So there were 3 of us, and we were living in a village with the villagers, just like them, eating the same food, and sort of having a bath every day out of a little tub that used to come, a bucket full of water. And then on the 2nd or 3rd day, we realized that the water that was coming in from a chappad outside, which is basically where the buffaloes, the dogs, everybody in the village is there. And you know, you realize at that time you have nothing in your control. You absolutely have nothing in your control, because you can think whoever you are, but at the end of the day, if you want to do something, if you want to work in poverty, at least, you know, do a good job. And the only way to do that is through succession planning, so that when you leave, you're not taking anybody's, let's say, their right with you. So that is in Kaarvan, just not at the top leadership, but also through the way our program runs, through enabling women leaders to come up. We want women in the villages to be able to take their own decisions regarding which businesses they want to invest into, whether they want to export or they want to work in local markets. And similarly, when it came to the top leadership, with the fact that I had to go, it was not even it was a no-brainer, really. The fact that there had to be succession planning for not only my position, but even for all other positions within Kaarvan. So that's something we do believe in strongly.
So coming back to your book, now let's talk about the book. Otherwise, people here will think, is this a book launch or is this a debate on social structures in Pakistan? So we'll also include that. It's part of the book, and the reason why we're talking about her work is because I think comes through very strongly in what she has written. It's a debut novel, which is, for me, it was a bit surprising because the writing is very mature. She has a firm grip on the characters. I especially like the female characters because they're independent, they're feisty, they're full of fire. The main character she literally has fire in her belly, and you can see it. She's just a child, but the way Aysha writes about her, I think we all know people like this. We all know characters like, they are there in our families, they are there in us, they're there around us, but we don't write about them, or we take them for granted, perhaps. So talking of nurturing figures and important figures in your life, Aysha, you mentioned how, because there's an awakening that happens with almost everyone. And in Aysha's case, her political awakening, or her knowledge of what's happening in the country, happened when she was only 12 years old, when her mother, she was I think studying in the American school.
Yeah, so maybe I could tell.
Yes, you tell the story. What happened?
It's a very interesting story. I was 12 years old. It was a hot Lahore afternoon. I think it was July. It was humid. I was a young teenager, 12 years old, studying in the American school, and my mother, Aysha Baqir, said that we had to go to a demonstration for women. And I was like, no, I want to go home. And she insisted, no, it's too important. You have to go. You have to show support. So I was a very unwilling, disgruntled teenager in my jeans and t-shirt who was dragged to a sort of demonstration called by Women's Action Forum. And I didn't know too much about this, but anyway, we arrived, and the road, the Mall Road, of those who are familiar with Lahore, was packed. It was packed with women, because a young village girl, a young girl actually working in someone's house, had been raped by her employer and his son, and she was blind. And because she was pregnant, the judge had sentenced her to 3 years imprisonment and lashings. And the women were out in a mob protesting that this is not right. And happy to say the ruling was changed. However, that afternoon and what we stood for and what we were fighting against just never left my mind. Being a teenager, however, I quickly put it out of my mind, and within a month or so I'd forgotten about it and gotten back to my school life and my after-school sports and whatever else compels you when you're a teenager. 20 years down the road, I'd gone to college, come back, and I'd started Kaarvan. And I was, again, it was a hot afternoon. I was sitting in a Baji's house. We call our village women Bajis. And I was trying to convince her two daughters, Shazia and Nazia, to come to a training. And the mothers just kept saying no. She said, no, they have too much work at home. They have to cook the food. They have to look after the children. And I said, look, you know, how about if we change the timing of the training? Or how about if you can just help someone or call someone to help you, because this training will really let them earn money. And the woman just kept on saying, the Baji just kept on saying no. And then I think we were, because they were, you know, we were trying to convince her so much, she turned to me, she said, what do you know? She said, you know, she said, it takes a minute, but the shame lasts a lifetime. And in that minute, I think something just changed, because we were talking different languages. For her, the fact that sexual violence is a constant daily threat had never even crossed our minds. But it's a reality for her. And she, as a mother, must protect her daughters. And that's when I thought that back to that afternoon, that 20 years down the road, what has changed? And now we're standing in 2022. And I think to myself again, what has changed? What has changed for the village women out there? What has changed for the women in middle class who have to take public transportation to go to their jobs? What has changed for even us who are living in our houses but still, or women who are driving cars on the motorway, or women who go to see their friends? What has changed for them? So I think that's where the story came, and you know, the fact that rape really is a silent pandemic. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 3 women worldwide has been sexually or physically assaulted or suffered non-partner sexual violence. These aren't figures coming from nowhere. So I think unless we start talking about it, not in the point of view of shame and that, oh my God, it's a subject when cases happen, but every day on our dining tables with our children, and not look at it as, and not sexualize it and not complicate it. It's a crime. It is a crime, and let's treat it one. So the Beyond the Fields really came out of, you know, talking about the fact that let's talk about rape for what it is, and it is a crime.
Thank you, Aysha. So let's talk about now the main character of the mother in the novel, Beyond the Fields. She's the complete opposite of your mother, who was very nurturing and independent and gave you a lot of liberty. So, but we see the mother changing somewhat during the novel, but we're talking about layers of oppression here. So it happens, it's not just in the village. In my experience, even in the cities, we have layers of oppression in our homes. People live in palatial mansions, but there are layers of oppression there which they don't recognize. And perhaps it's because, you know, they say your life begins when you step out of your comfort zone. People have become very comfortable, so they are fine with a comfortable lifestyle, and even if they're being oppressed, they just swallow it down, right? So how much importance would you give to the home environment and the way you're brought up, your parents, your brothers, your cousins? Because in this novel, because there's also in feminist critique, there's sometimes a tendency of saying that all men are bad, or they're evil, or they're not helpful. Would you agree with that? Because in your novel, you have some men who are allies of Zara.
Thanks. So first of all, I would like to mention my mom, Aysha Baqir, who's sitting here, and she's been a role model. So I just a round of applause, because
yes,
I think I saw her work all my life. I saw her juggle her work along her social commitments, her family commitments, and I don't think she's ever let any of us down. What she's taught me is that it's possible to achieve your dreams. She supported me when I wanted to go to college. She supported me when, after LUMS, I didn't want to work in a corporation or a bank. I wanted to work in the villages. What that meant was that every morning, instead of taking a car to a bank or a multinational, I was taking a rickshaw or a tanga to go to the villages. And my mother, I don't know whether she knew or not knew, but it was just like, okay, just do it. If you want to do it, just do it. And that's phenomenal, because she was taking that much, she was trusting me, and she was maybe also taking her risk, the fact that anything could have happened, and then she would have had to sort of explain to everyone. So yes, you know, I'm thankful for that. I think upbringing definitely has a role on everyone's, what they come out to be, and your experiences as well. So Maheen, you're absolutely right. I think there comes a point where where you have to make a choice, and where it's a struggle, and it's a choice between maybe having a life of comfort or doing something that is not popular, or taking a stance on maybe the smallest issue, but maybe it might be the right thing to do. I think I often say that when I meet people, I see stories. Everybody, you know, everybody has a story inside them. And I think maybe if everyone could just sort of take in that story and see where it's going, or where they want it to go, maybe we could, you know, maybe they would be more aware of it. But anyway, I see stories when I meet people, and I think that's where the character of Zara came from. Because I saw so many Zaras. I've met so many Zaras. The village women, they are my heroes. Because with so little, they persevere every day. And with such humor, I've never laughed so much as I have with the village women of Pakistan. They make you realize that there is just this earth and the heavens, and that's it. And they're, with so little, they make do. What they can do with, a 50 rupee note, I would be lost, because I'm coming from a life of privilege. But at the same time, meeting them every day, and the fact that they live in villages with, where there are fleas, there's feces, there's mud hut, there's no electricity, water, gas. I would go and exit. And when I would come back, I would take my shower, and I would then get on with my life. But at the same time, they would be there. They're still there. So that's something I wanted to share. I think when I relocated to Singapore, I think the fact that I had maybe worked on economic development, but what about the social side? And the fact that these women are still there, and we have to acknowledge them. We have to acknowledge how brave and smart and clever and humorous and resilient they are, because often we don't even take a second look at them because of the way they are dressed or because of the way they smell. And that's all appearances. But we forget what's really inside. And that might be that they are way more braver than any of us.
I think meeting village women or women who are not so privileged really puts your life and your problems into perspective, right? You realize how lucky you are, how privileged you are, and how you've been taking things for granted. Somewhat similar to the pandemic and how it made us realize that little things in life that we take for granted were actually amazing, because once the pandemic receded, you realize, oh my God, we can go and see a movie. We can actually go out and meet people, So we took all these things for granted. So the same thing for these women. They have lead a life of struggle, but as you said, they don't lose their sense of humor, their resilience, their dedication, and they bring up their families. And of course, the social structures, let's talk about social justice now. Social structures in the villages, they perpetuate this gender violence, and they perpetuate oppression against women. That we all know, I think, to a certain extent. But what the issue that we've also discussed this, Aysha, and also I see it in your book, about the complicity or the silence of other women when confronted with rape cases within their own community. They don't speak up, and they, because shame and honor is in Pakistan supposed to reside within the woman, and this is something that we all learn from birth, no matter which household we come from, whether it's the village or the city or anywhere. So what is your take on that?
So I think talking about shame and honor, it's about how you look you look at the words, and I think that maybe I don't think our religion really has too much to do with it. I think it's our culture, and then it's also a way of maintaining power. And I think that is something we all have to acknowledge, because if we don't acknowledge that, then we're actually, it's maybe not even patriarchy, but then we're just we're not acknowledging a crime. And in Beyond the Fields, what I've tried to do is, yes, there's a story about Zara, but there are also other smaller stories. There's a story about a young girl named Chirag who elopes, and then suddenly the boy she's with says, all right, that's it, I don't want to get married. And what happens to Chirag? Within Beyond the Fields is also a story of a very supportive brother who wants to study and who has ambition, and what he sees his sister going through. It's a story of all, so it is one story, and there are some stories within Beyond the Fields. But the story of Zara, it's actually, and for those who have read it, a lot of people have come back to me and said that, but why that ending? Why did you have to put that in the ending? Why couldn't it just be a complete happy story, and everybody becomes out a winner? And that's, I said everybody is a winner. The problem becomes is that when you equate the fact that when a woman or a girl is raped, she is the one to blame in any way, and I'm against that. I just absolutely don't. There's a BBC documentary on tea, if anybody's watched that, and it's brilliant for those of you who haven't. It's about making tea and offering your friend a cup of tea, and it brings home the points very, very carefully. The fact that we have to say no to rape and sexual assault, irrespective of whether the girl came there and sat of her own violation or anything. So I think that's one of the topics that Beyond the Fields deals with, and that's something I feel very strongly about for all women all over the world.
Aysha, would you like to read an excerpt from your book? You had mentioned that something from the beginning.
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I can do the beginning.
Or whatever you wish.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Well, I have my favorite, but I'm not sure how many people in the audience have read the book. So
you don't want to give away the story.
I don't want to give away.
Okay,
so not too many. Maybe I'll just stick with the beginning then.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I have my own favorite part where the conversation between Zara and her twin Tara takes place, and they really come out of their, let's say, their cocoons, and they challenge each other on the most primal level. But I'll stick with the beginning just because it could be as a teaser. Okay.
Keep the mystery element.
Yes, keep the mystery element. Okay. 207 days since the rape, 205 days since my twin had been taken away, and miles of muck in between. I sank into my seat and shut my eyes. Laughter burst out, chatter hummed. Hawker boys screeched deals for sticky sweetmeats and icy colas. I inhaled and tasted dry grit. The horn bleated like a fidgety goat. Closing my eyes, I counted seconds and then went faster than seconds. When the engine growled and the hollow metal body shuddered, I crouched on the seat. A dust cloud had swallowed my village. Down, Jahil, roared the bus driver. Flushing, I lowered myself into my seat. I wasn't a Jahil or ignorant, I could prove it, but I wasn't free yet. I was caged from the tip of my head to the soles of my slippers. Abba said I didn't have a choice. Amma said the burqa gave me freedom. I could see others without being seen, but I wanted to be seen and heard, like other girls, like girls who went to school, like girls who chased their dreams. Without warning, the bus lurched to a stop. Dham, dham. A feverish drum beat led a wedding procession across the road. Starched like a puppet, the groom straddled a white horse, surrounded by a crowd of men whirling pink scarves. Behind him, the bride, swaddled in folds of tinseled red and gold, huddled on a mule, trying to inch forward within the pack of dark-veiled women and a troop of soulful pipers. The horn blared again, and the childlike eyes looked up from the folds of the cloth. I shivered. In a dark flicker, I became the bride, bound to a new family, Amma had declared I was old enough. I was 15 or 16. She wasn't sure. She had no records or pictures of our birth, but claimed we had been born the year after the river Sutlej had flooded our village. She had shown me off to aunties wanting good girls for their nephews and to wrinkled men seeking second wives. But they said I wasn't white enough. I made poor tea and I didn't have much of a dowry. I smoked a hookah too, but they didn't know that. They didn't know me. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a passage that I wanted to read, because just a last minute thing, but while I was reading the book, this really stood out for me. And this is about other women in the village and the community who are silent when they see a rape victim, or when they see somebody from within their own community who has been raped and assaulted. And I thought it applies very well to women from the city as well. It's not just village women. Their silence strangled them. Why were they silent? Because of the laws? No. It was about shame and dishonor. Rape, shamed and dishonored. No one spoke about it. My mother's friends, the women I had known since my childhood, were willing to keep their daughters inside and cage them for fear of the shame of dishonor, but not willing to challenge those who smeared them with shame and dishonor. They didn't deserve to have daughters. They were cowards. We were cowards. Why didn't we shame and dishonor the men who raped girls? Why did we not speak up against them? Why didn't other men speak up against them? It made no sense. In a dacoity, the law didn't accuse the victim of leaving the door open or leaving the cupboard unlocked. But with rape, the victim was accused and charged for being raped, like it was her fault for being there. So I found this passage very moving, and what I see is that, like we have seen about the laws in Pakistan, but you have written about the Hudud ordinance also, yes, about where the woman's evidence, there are issues with that. But apart from that, our societal structure, like you mentioned about other women not being able to speak up or not willing to speak up, and all the onus for everything is on, the onus is on the victim, or I don't like the word victim, I would say survivor. It's on the survivor to prove her innocence, even though, or to prove that she wasn't at fault, like you said, in a robbery or in a murder. I feel that in a rape and assault case is the only crime in which the aggressor is not the criminal. It is the woman or the survivor who is supposed to be the aggressor, because it is her who's always defending herself. We see this recently in cases in Pakistan, in so-called elite families as well, and we see this in villages, and we see the Mukhtaran Mai case in which the woman stood up, and she is a role model for all of us, and she's a survivor. But I've heard many women, especially men would say it, but I've also heard women running her down and saying, oh, she just took money, or she did this, or she did that, just to kind of not acknowledging her bravery. And what do we see about the perpetrators who did this to Mukhtaran Mai? What has happened to our laws? They were released recently, right? Yeah. And we talked about that. So where there's no accountability, these kind of cases will multiply, and the societal structure, at least we have it in ourselves. Like you have done what you wanted to do. You went and established this NGO, you worked with women, they are your heroes, you've written about them in your book. But I think all of us as a society, there are many ladies here today, I'd like to appeal to them that change your mindset. Those of us who have this mindset, which is because of patriarchy, the way we've been brought up, the way we have seen things around us, and of course silence is very comfortable. Who doesn't want to be comfortable? But like they say, your life starts when you step out of your comfort zone. You, instead of going to corporate life, went to the villages, and it obviously was not easy, but it was a great learning curve for you. So these kind of topics that you've explored in the book are very interesting, and I think I wish there were more gentlemen here today. I'm disappointed to see the lack of males here, because like you've written in your book that males can be our allies. We take the example of Malala Yousafzai, when she, a few years ago, her father was asked by some foreign journalist that, what did you do to make your daughter so special? Like, what did you make her study? What was her upbringing like? And he said, I did nothing. All I did was that I did not clip her wings. So like you said, there's so many Zaras in our society. You meet them, you see them. If only they could get the chances and opportunities that Malala got and that Zara got through some male allies. Of course, it was a big struggle. But how do you see the future of women's rights in this country, our patriarchal structure, social justice, all of it? And what is your take? And do you think things will improve maybe in the next 10 years?
So, Maheen, thanks. In 2006, Women's Protection Act was introduced and the laws have changed. And then again in 2016. So yes, we're definitely heading towards some improvement. There are other gains to be made, but always looking at the law, the law is not stagnant, it's living. And sometimes laws can be changed when voices come together and voices rise up. So, in the words of a famous Nigerian author, Chimamanda Adichie, there is a danger of in a single story.
Yeah.
And the single story of Pakistan has been that, women are unsafe, it's backwards, there are patriarchal structures and no progress can be made. And I would like to challenge that, because we worked in the village. We had fabulous, fantastic men, role models who, one of them, I remember there was a woman who did a order for Generation, and then Generation was very happy with her. They wanted to give her more, and we were concerned because how was she going to do this order with her women workers without, something, because she was responsible for all her family chores like cooking and cleaning. So the husband said, "Don't worry, Bajis, I will cook, I will clean, I will feed the children, I will do whatever it takes." He was he really came out. And then many of the men, when they saw income coming in, they said, "Wait, she doesn't have to take a bus, we'll take her on our bikes." But first the voices came out, and that's where I'd like to say that right now Pakistan is characterized by a single story. Let's change that, because it's incomplete, and all of us have a story. Like I said, when I meet people, I see stories, and all of our stories maybe can come out, and all of us have experiences, and all of us have feelings and expressions. So it's just not one law or one person or one structure. It's all of us coming together to be heard. The fact that if we can just talk to our children, for example, about it, to boys and girls, not as a separate session, but maybe on the dining table, over a regular conversation or a coffee, whatever it takes. But I do feel that how things will change is when we want them to change. If we keep sort of saying ping pong with this, that the laws have to change for things to change, or the XYZ has to change for things to change, it's not going to change. All of us, everybody has to really take an initiative. Sometimes it means even challenging people who are close to you, or maybe being the only person in a room full of women who says that no, that was wrong. You might think that you might become unpopular, but who knows how many of those women actually heard you and said, "Oh wait, maybe she's right, maybe it was wrong what happened." So your voice, give your voice meaning. All of us have our voices, and they're very, very important, and they're very unique. And that's, I think, the job of the author is maybe to throw out issues, but the real objective becomes is to see some kind of social change, because I do like writing about social injustice. So that's my, I don't even think it's a genre, but that's when people ask me, what do you like writing about? I like writing about social injustice. So it might not be the sort of the coffee party, whatever. It might not be the social, socially popular, but it's something I feel very passionately about, because I think then we are really at peace, and who doesn't want that?
So, thanks, Aysha. Well, I would like to ask you, because most of our writers, our fiction writers, keep the Western audience in mind, right, when we write, whether it's Urdu or English. I think in English especially, we look at the West and try and figure out what will sell, or what kind of narrative should we write. So if you had to give a new writer advice who is writing their first book, and who would also like to cater a little bit to the Western perceptions and narrative, what advice would you give them?
What I'm seeing in literature now is not so much of a focus on the plot, and this is especially for younger writers, not so much a focus on the plot as a focus on character. Make your character real, make your character compelling, draw them in. And I'm sure the Western audience and the Western publishers and agents will be drawn in. I've seen that happen and again. And for those of you who've read the recent sort of winners, it's really about characters who are compelling. It's about mother-daughter relationships. It's about brothers' relationships, sisters. Let's be honest with our emotions, because unless we're not and we don't bring them to the forefront, they'll just be bottled up. So to any new writers, I would say, focus on the character, make them as truthful as possible.
Thanks, Aysha. I wanted to just mention, like you said, there's also like nations are made of stories. I think Yuval Harari said this. And you also said that everywhere we go, being writers, we see stories wherever we go, right? And as they say, real life is stranger than fiction. So sometimes you see very surreal things happening in real life, whether in politics or in personal life, and you think, is this really happening, or is this something, is like a figment of my imagination? So when I went, while I was reading your book, I went to the park near my house, and there's a skating rink there, and there was a little young girl who was skating there. I usually try to go after Maghrib and less noise and less confusion, so you can actually think. All the great writers apparently used to walk and get this great idea, so I keep trying to do that to get some kind of brilliant inspiration. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So there was a young girl, maybe about 9 or 10 years old, who was skating there on her own. Her mother was sitting close by. There was a lady sitting in a shawl who I assume was the mother, and I was just standing near the skating rink trying to stretch or something. And the girl was, she had long hair, she had some ribbons in her hair, and her hair was flying while she was skating very fast, going round and round. There was nobody else there. She looked very happy. Her eyes were, dilated, and she was smiling, and she looked so excited and happy. I looked at her face and I felt so happy to see her. Then I looked at the mother, and she was like a hunched over, depressed looking, sad looking, forlorn figure. And then she saw me standing near her daughter, so I think she was sitting there to keep an eye on the daughter, because you can't leave your kids alone, especially girls nowadays. So she went off to the gate to talk to someone, and then she came back, and I noticed her body language all hunched over and everything. And I thought, this is the age around 10, 11. I read a research study which said that this is the age when girls start changing. Girls and boys around the same till the age of about 10. And then they start changing because of social structures, because of patriarchy, because of conditioning. And I just saw what a contrast between the mother and the daughter. I wonder when the daughter is older, maybe around the 10 years, will she be like the mother, or will she be able to fly and soar like she's doing right now? And she was just a sight for sore eyes. And the mother, on the other hand, I don't know what was happening with her, but she just looked very sad. So I mean, the contrast is there. You see little girls running around with little boys, but yet when they're older, around 18, 19, 20, 21, you see the change happening. They get married, you see that they're sometimes their identities get submerged, they change. And so we should hang on to our identities, and it doesn't matter which social structure you're from, which kind of family you're from. This happens to most women in Pakistan. So the young girls and the mothers who are sitting here, and the people who will have girls in their families, I think Aysha is with me on this, that give them the independence and the freedom to soar, so that they can fly high like Malala. And now we have time for question and answers if anybody would like to ask anything.
There's one baby at the back.
Representing the minority over here, I'll tell you this, that it's very unfortunate, but laws are there in this country. And we had recently a discussion with Chancellor, who's the Director General of Wages, and he told us that crimes like these, they catch the people and they hand over them to police. Mr. Aftab Nabi, former IG, they hand them over to the police, and within a short time these people are out. And when this kind of a thing happens, more and more people get encouraged that they can do it, they can kill. Unfortunately, I hate saying it, but our Prime Minister also made a statement, as Maheen pointed out, where woman is the victim. It's, like, I think that it's all over this country, that they're not, catching the people who are responsible. As Maheen very rightly said, that in every case, it is, there's a robbery or something. It's not that you left the door open, but here in this case, it's very unfortunate. And I personally think, and we also had this discussion, unfortunate, very unfortunate. The parents today, especially in the privileged class, whether they may be the rural privilege or the urban privilege, they are totally doing away with the responsibility of, good giving, good upbringing to the parents, I mean to the children. And this is unfortunate. I just don't know what we can do about it. You're brilliant, we loved it.
So I'd like just to add a comment. Absolutely, what you have said is spot on. The power, though, however, is still in our hands to ostracize someone or not. And the power of ostracization is very, very strong. If, there was a case where if a girl is raped or, people ostracize the family, that somehow it is the family's fault or the girl's fault and nobody wants to meet her. Who should we be really ostracizing or not meeting or making it very clear? Social isolation, ostracization is a very, very powerful message, and it's in our hands. Nobody can tell us who to be friends with or not. It is our own hands. But for instance, I told my boys this joke, not this joke actually, but I have two boys, 18 and 14. And I said that, look, you're going to be growing up, many times you're going to be in situations where one of your friends is going to be telling a joke that's nasty, it's about a girl, and it's not right. And many of the boys will be standing there laughing and, saying, oh, it's funny, walk off. I said, just walk away, because it's not right. This is how, values develop. So if everybody can just tell their children that it's not all right for their boys to join in jokes or in conversations, or even our friends. I have male friends, and I think now they know you. They say you get very touchy or you get very upset, because I said it's not even a joke. It's not a joke, and it still continues. There are memes, there are all of this coming out. But even if we just start with that, just saying to our boys and girls that it's not okay. Well, a rude joke is being discussed, just walk away if you don't want to. So one of my younger ones said, but Mama, what if it's a really popular boy who's telling the joke? So I said, what do I do then? So I said, well, okay, if you don't want to take him on, but just walk away. You have 2 feet, don't be part of it. We send such and maybe there'll be someone else in that group who say, well, Faiz has walked away, can I just walk away too? And maybe that boy who's telling the joke will find himself surrounded by no one, and he'll stop telling the joke. So never forget that you have a power. And every Pakistani woman, and maybe I'm more biased, I think women, we have power. We have so much power. So don't let that power go away from your hands. You're bringing up children, you're raising families, you have a voice. Even men, you have so much. Yes, there are laws, and yes, there are actions, and yes, sometimes you see the perpetrators walking on the field, but if you're not talking to the perpetrator, maybe there'll be a message sent, and that hurts. Everybody hurts when someone ignores them. So let's send the message out.
Yes, thank you. Aysha, I have two, one not related to the subject matter, is about yourself.
Sure.
The introduction doesn't give your creative writing journey as such. So certainly to this novel, there must have been a journey to that. But when you went to the village, my question is the frustrating part too, because this is a converted audience, so this is not really the ideal representative. None of us are. We are already on that side. Is the powerful women there, and the frustrating, very big chunk of prosperous upper middle class women in the urban Pakistan that are absolutely resisting this progressive thinking, and they do it day in and day out. Even after the latest Aurat March, the basic objection I got for attending it was from principals of schools, from my friends in the US, arguing literally, why do you go to this Aurat March when they have slogans like those? So did you face those landlord privileged women? Did you meet them? Because I stayed only once in Sargodha with a Paracha landed family, and they were girls fashionable within their confines, and they were attending the same wedding, laden with jewelry every night that I was there to attend. But they were locked in a total regressive mindset, all the money, all the land, all the privilege. So this is the chunk of Pakistani women that need convinced, who have the power, who are Sophie Sheikh of Singapore, my dear friend, also said to my daughter, why Annie acted very well in that film, she acted in a film, but did she have to run away from home to get married to that boy? She didn't like that. So to this day I've been arguing with Sophies and the Poonams and the others, you know, so there are very few of these powerful people, and she has the power. And there are a lot of times she and I would argue, and then I'd put the Pakistani progressive side in front in Singapore type of a place. So thank you. So please relate to that.
Thank you so much.
Creative journey.
So my creative journey began when I moved to Singapore, and I think what I realized was that although I'd worked in economic empowerment, what about the social justice part? And a friend of mine, Christine, she's German, she said that, look, there's a writing group, and this was not when I knew I wanted to write. So Christine said, look, I'm going to a writers group, and why don't you come with me? Just to listen. And said, okay. So it would meet up every month, and I knew no one there, no one knew me. And you know, we used to sit in a circle and we used to listen to each other's stories. And I went the first month with Christine, and Christine was also working on a novel, and I went the second month. And you know, by the fourth and fifth month, I started to feel that, oh, maybe there are stories that you know, there are stories inside me. And that's when I said to you that when I see people, I see stories. Because I felt that I had a story. I had a story about what I had seen, but not talked about. And I want to share a little bit more about that, because I didn't talk about my work. I didn't talk about my work with too many people because they didn't understand it. No, when I went out for dinners in Lahore, nobody wanted a conversation about villages, and nobody wanted to know how hot it was, or no, I had to sort of, you know, act into become someone else. So the writing group really inspired me, and then I began to take workshops, because I quickly realized that I wasn't. Yes, I'd taken writing courses in colleges, but creating writing is very different from donor or proposal writing. So I was like on a speed express rush to, I think my mother can vouch for that. I was taking courses left, right, center. But the story came together very quickly. I think maybe because it was coming from a place of truth. So the story I didn't have, with the characters are very real. So I say, you know, that as you know, it's a fiction story, but the voices are real. So the voices were already there. It's how to put them out, how to write, how to be able to communicate your thoughts was challenging. And I was lucky enough that they were very, you know, it wasn't COVID times. I was able to take workshops online and in person in Singapore. And I quickly sort of, you know, I felt the weaknesses I had. I shared it with a few sort of friends. They gave me feedback. It went for revision. It came back. There's an organization called. This is your very first writing. This is my debut novel. Yes, yes. So this really was the first time, and I realized that I love writing. I really love it, and God has been very kind, because first development was my passion, and I found something that I like, and I'm working on my second project, and I love writing. I love being able to put thoughts together in ways that can make people question. So I did a piece last year for August 14th on Pakistani women. I had a great response to that, and an organization in Singapore, Kitaab, published it. So I think my creative journey, there's no way that it's ended, hopefully, inshallah, but I have much more to learn. I do want to continue taking courses. I do want to, improve my writing style, the way I portray my characters. At the same time, I feel that being honest and truthful with characters is something very important, and the whole social justice part, and I feel there is a lot of other social injustices that have to be dealt with. So, yes, so about women, and if I'm correct, you said about women not being supportive of,
Did you also meet the village?
So yes, there is naturally, yes.
This lot that you write about.
Yeah. So there are,
Sitting there in power.
I think that what happens is that as soon as change starts, everybody will not be on your side. But if you're persistent, right, and as soon as change starts happening, I'll give you an example. When we went inside a village, nobody would believe us because they had been approached before. People had come to them. They had been swindled. Their ID cards had been taken and loans had been taken.
You were the politician's wife, the Chaudhry's wife.
They also thought we'd never be able to do it. Because who can connect a village woman to a shopkeeper in Lahore successfully? Who can do that? Nobody. It's tough work. We do it because we love it, because we see the change. We love it when that woman is able to talk to that Lahori shopkeeper and get an order. And he starts changing it. By that time, it's too late because nobody actually realizes. You see, if you keep on doing something, live up to your promises, the income starts coming in, the other woman gets interested. We didn't at the outright say that we are challenging your authority, but what we said was, this is no way for the people in the villages of Pakistan to live. And the landlords were actually with us on that, because the poverty they're living in. So they said, can we take credit for your program? We said, please go ahead. Why not? It doesn't make a difference to us. If that woman is getting connected and earning her income, that's all that matters to us, because we've done our job, right? So what we realized was bringing all stakeholders together and not catering to individual egos or our own ego even, because sometimes your own ego becomes your enemy. We weren't out there to say that, oh, Kaarvan is the only and the best. It's no way the only and the best. We are part of the bigger puzzle, and that's what we still believe. So we brought in men, we brought in landlords. I think the only segment that was a bit upset was the middlemen. But you know, we said to them that, look, you go into a shop and you're talking about women's clothing, women's laces. How do you even bring the information back that's correct? Because women need to be attuned. A woman in village, if she doesn't know what the fashion is, what the color is, what the cuts are, how will she make what's in market demand? And I think he was also able to understand that he's just an unnecessary piece in that link. And the only reason he was there, and this is interesting, the only reason he was there because women couldn't go to the villages. But when we talked to the men of the women, why they couldn't leave, they said, look, she can go, but she doesn't know where to go. So it wasn't an issue that they were restricting the woman. It's just that, look, I want my woman to be safe, and somebody has to be with her because she doesn't know where to go. So we did market mapping. We sat with the women in the buses that set off from the villages and then ended up in Shahalmi or Fortress. We got off there, we went shop by shop, we had buyer-seller meetings. So if you see something to the end, and the men were very happy because they had been escorted there, they had been escorted back. We did this 3-4 times. The order came, and then suddenly you had men saying, oh wait, let me go and I will take her myself now. So it's just, I know you will absolutely have opposition, but look, argument is good, discussion is good, thrive on it.
This is about Kaarvan's work. I'm talking about the rape and the victim being blamed is the women.
And that's yes, and so I'm saying that
shutting up.
So
anti-Malala mindset, I call it hashtag, you know.
So continue the conversation. I would say you have people with their own points of view. Look, discussion and debate is healthy. Is any society. You know, even the Western world has the debates. Absolutely, sorry.
Hi, you had mentioned that when you see people, you see their story.
Yeah.
And of course, these women that you work with must have so many stories. And it is through authors like yourself and your work that these women's stories are given voice. But what about literacy in these areas, and where does that play into the social injustice? If you could comment on that. Thank you.
So the majority of the women we were working with were not, they hadn't received formal education. Having said that, you know, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Iram.
Hi, Iram. So the majority of the women, Iram, were very shrewd though. Like I said, what they could do with the 50 rupees note and the way they could make it stretch and the amount they could get out of it, I would never be able to do that because, you know, I'm coming from a place of privilege. So they're very smart. They're very astute. Their entrepreneurial skills are fantastic. So we are dealing with, when I talk about entrepreneurship in Pakistan at the grassroots level, it's exploding. Just give them the opportunity. Their daughters were going to school, but that's a funny story because sometimes their daughters would come back and say, the teacher wanted a boiled egg today and we couldn't give a boiled egg, so she said, don't come to class tomorrow. So that's something else that's going on, and literacy will always be a challenge. But as far as the acumen and the business sort of sense, it's phenomenal in our villages.
Hi. I'm Kavila from My Bookshelf, and I just finished your novel. I really enjoyed it, especially because I think you took such a heavy subject matter, but the book itself wasn't depressing. So kudos for that. Also, I really enjoyed the fact that the men weren't completely demonized and portrayed as the villains. So my question to you is that there's a lot of issues authors have publishing in Pakistan. I read the Singapore version. So is the Pakistani version different, or is it exactly the same?
It's exactly the same. And actually, when I questioned the Singapore publishers, I wanted to know, why are you publishing this book? Because I couldn't understand that. Why would a Singapore publishing house? Because Singaporeans are very for promoting themselves. And the head of publishing said that, look, your story is set in Pakistan, but the problem is here also. So I think, like I said, Beyond the Fields is just meant to throw out an issue, because the problem, like I said, 1 in every 3 women, the World Health Organization, sexually or physically assaulted. So the numbers are out there. So thank you.
So there's, Nadia, before you end this, there's one small a mini question that I forgot to ask Aysha, and we did discuss it, so I just wanted to have a take on this, that her organization is doing very well in Punjab, and like we discussed, there's magic is created when women come together, and that applies to all of you lovely ladies too. So why is it that you said, I asked you why you were not able to replicate, or why you're having difficulties in replicating this organization in Sindh, and what were the issues that you faced here, since we all live in this great province? Let's hear from you. What was the issue that you talked about?
Right. I think one of the issues that was the last 2 years have been COVID, because one, nobody has been able to, we're just trying to sustain the work we are doing without expansion. The other issue, and it existed whether even we were working in Punjab or Sindh or any other province, is that when it goes back to the thing that development and non-dependence, our women, our customers, they're not our women, they are women for anybody else to work with. And similarly, I would urge all organizations, the women you are working with are not your women. So when we go to another district and we're trying to find women, or we're going to another province, sometimes it's like, no, but that organization is working there, so all the women are working there, so nobody will be able to join you. And so we feel like, but why? Why is there a restriction? Because these are the poorest of the poor. They need access to as many opportunities as possible. So let's give them that. However, we still, through our networking, and I think how you work also defines you, and I think then you start other organizations start realizing it's not about ownership so much as it is about the fact that you really have to have a common vision going forward.
Okay, thanks, Aysha.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was a lovely session, and I would like to request everyone who does not have a book.
You must ask a question.
Okay, just one.
You can have one last question.
Umar Noman. We had a female Prime Minister. Did anything change during her time that affected your work?
Not really. We are very apolitical, so not really. And like I said, we don't talk so much, we don't focus too much on the publicity, because as soon as you start telling too many people about your work, things start to go wrong. Okay. At least I realize that. So just better do your work, focus the women. Our customers, like I said, our customers are the women. If the women are happy with us, and there have been points that they haven't been happy with us because the donors want something else and the woman wants something else, and we're trying to say, okay, how do we make sense of this? If the village woman for which I'm employed, for which I'm getting my salary, is happy with me, I'm happy, because that's why I'm working. if she's not happy with me and my donor is happy with me, something is wrong. Because the donor isn't, you know, I'm not working for the donor, I'm working for the village woman.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this wonderful session. Lunch is served, and those who don't have a book, please come and help yourself and have the book signed by the author. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please come for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.